Hello and welcome to Unit 4. I apologize that this unit introduction is a bit late. You've already done the reading tweets for this unit, and I've been following along with those. I appreciate all of your great ideas about all three of the different readings, the American Yawp, the Indian removal documents, and the Hershberger journal article. I wanted to remind you, and I've just now fixed the reading worksheet rubric as well as the section in this learning module for the reading worksheets to reflect the fact that you only have to complete one of the three reading worksheets for Units 4 and 5. I've realized that it seems like those reading worksheets are a bit onerous, and although I think that the point, what they get at, is important, it's perhaps too much to have you do a worksheet for each of the three readings every unit. So instead, for this unit, you only have to focus on the Hershberger article, Mobilizing Women, the Struggle Against Indian Removal, for the reading worksheet. So I've already fixed everything up. If you click the Reading Worksheets tab for Unit 4, you'll see a worksheet that's just for the journal article. And of course that's the Hershberger in this case. And I've also changed the section here in the learning module to reflect that this is worth 33 points. If you have any questions about that, let me know. If you've already completed extra reading worksheets, I'm willing to give you extra credit for those. So yeah, just let me know if you have any questions about that. This unit, what we're looking at is the notion of democracy and how it changed between 1820 and 1850 or so. So principally we're looking at the Andrew Jackson administration, which is a very paradoxical and conflicted sort of, he's a very conflicted sort of president in certain ways. And his administration also illustrates a lot of conflicts in U.S. history at this point in time. On the one hand, Jackson is typically heralded as the president that helped to expand democracy to all white males. So it was during his era that took place. There were no longer property requirements across the board. Every white man in the United States could vote. Of course, you'll notice the way I'm saying that, still huge limitations on democracy, still large swaths of the population completely left out, but in many respects it was a step forward from what the situation had been when the Union was first concocted and put together under the Constitution in 1789. Women still continue to play an important role in American public life, probably even more so between 1820 and 1850, and so that's something to keep in mind as you complete the readings. In the American Yawp, we of course get the broad context of what was going on politically, socially, economically, racially, and otherwise during this period in time, and so we see that shift from the old notables like the John Quincy Adams toward the Martin Van Burens and the Andrew Jacksons, who want to see the democratic process, enfranchisement, be much more broad. Yet at the same time, both of those men were willing to greatly enhance the power of the presidency. As many of you have pointed out from watching the Crash Course films already, of course Jackson overstepped the purview of the president by ignoring the Supreme Court's ruling on Indian removal. So the Supreme Court struck down the Indian removal program that had been going on since 1830, which Jackson championed, which Van Buren said was the cornerstone of Jackson's presidency. The Supreme Court ruled it was unconstitutional, it was unjust, and it couldn't take place. Jackson flatly ignored the Supreme Court and instead sent federal forces into Georgia to force the Cherokees to remove, and also supported the lottery system by which white Georgians could get land that had once belonged to the Cherokees. Of course, the Trail of Tears, their removal story, is one of the most tragic in American history. It is a case of ethnic cleansing. Some would say genocide because of the large proportion of people who died along the way, but also the fact that the removal of the Cherokee was a direct attack upon their cultural way of life. Cherokee people, like most other native groups, saw their homeland as something sacred to them, something given to them by the Creator, something that was a very part of their identity and their heritage and their culture. So removal also hit at that part of their cultural identity. Fortunately, the Cherokee people have been resilient and have continued to the present day, but not without having to overcome extreme hardships perpetrated against them by the U.S. government. I wish I could say this was an isolated case, but the U.S. government continued having a very inconsistent quote-unquote Indian policy well into the early 20th century, which meant that over and over again, as the United States moved further and further west, and as people moved from east to west to populate those areas that were of course already populated by native people, each of these native groups had to once again deal with similar kinds of issues, although within different historical contexts. So in that regard, then, Jackson in many ways ruled as an absolutist, or at least tried to, as much as he could. He tried to get the backing of the American people to destroy the bank, which he did. He was successful in the bank war in putting down the Bank of the United States, not renewing its charter. It seems as though many people supported that, and he said that his election was a mandate in that regard, meaning that because he was elected, the American people must have wanted him to end the bank. That, of course, is up for debate, as we know, with more current claims from one side of the aisle or the other, whether in Congress or the White House, about having a certain mandate to enact policy. As we know, usually politicians win with a very narrow margin. They're presiding over very divided public, and so to pretend that one side has the majority because you got elected, has a clear majority, that everyone wants it, not quite what the case is. It wasn't the case with Jackson. So again, these are all things to keep in mind, especially as you read the Hirschberger article. Think about what that article contributes to the story of Indian removal, the Jackson presidency, but also the benevolent empire, or the middle-class reformers, mostly women, and religious women, who tried to enact important changes socially in the United States between 1820 and 1850. So I hope you continue to enjoy this unit. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you soon.